live. Welcome to the MLB Strategy Show. It is Thursday, August 26th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer, and we are here to break down a 9-game MLB slate. Doesn't look like we're going to have any weather issues, which is kind of fun. Be sure to hit that like button as you get in the door. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. And shout out to OddsShopper for being the presenting sponsor of this show. Looks like we did it again, Jordan. Normal latency for today. Tisk, tisk, tisk. Doesn't matter. It's the strategy show. Matters a little bit more on Live Before Lock, but it doesn't really matter at all for baseball. Either way, we got a lot to talk about. Interesting pitching options. Red Sox, very clearly the highest end implied total today, like a full run above everybody else. So it'll be interesting to talk about those guys. But let's start here. Adam, how did your Wednesday shake out?
Pretty well. Had a good night, won in cash, came out a little bit ahead in tournaments. The Red Sox game really pissed me off, though. Going into the bottom of the ninth in that game, I was in third in the big tournament on DraftKings. Alex was in first. I was in fifth. We had a subscriber in, I think, second and fourth. It was just the straight Awesemo top of the leaderboard. And then the Twins blew the save, Kyle Schwarber home run, and then some more chalk home runs later in the game. 9 runs scored between the ninth and 10th inning. None of us, I don't think, finished particularly close to the top after that.
That one was really annoying. I basically wrote that off during the day, and I had Twins money line, Twins run line, which ultimately was fine. But I also had Minnesota and Boston under 10.5, which seemed like a mortal lock for the longest time. Then that became not true. So that was kind of annoying for me. But either way, what are we going to do? Anything else interesting from yesterday's slate? I didn't really look at any of like the legitimate scoring from pitchers in the long run. Did anything happen that we weren't expecting?
No, I mean, there were some monster games. Snell, I know at one point had like 24 points through 4 or 5 innings. Ray went for 37. Woodruff went for 34. Wheeler was at 30, finished at 22 because they let him pitch the 9th inning and he just got shit on. But yeah, just a lot of high pitcher scoring. The pitcher for the Marlins had, I think at one point, 15 or 16, finished with 7. So he kind of had a bad inning as well. But yeah, just a lot of really good pitcher games. Ray, I think, struck out 14 guys in 7 innings or something.
Let's see. 37 for Ray, 34.5 for Woodruff, 33.5 for Snell. Bueller got to 28.5, and then everybody else was down in the next tier of the 20s and stuff around there. Bryce Wilson, Bailey Ober, Wheeler to 22. So who was the biggest bust from a pitcher? I guess that's Edward Cabrera, I guess.
Ohtani.
Yeah, that one works too.
I don't know what he finished with, but I know
14.25 for Ohtani, 7.5 for Edward Cabrera. Obviously not as important at the 5K price tag, but like we said yesterday, salary wasn't a huge deal, so it kind of matters that he didn't get anywhere near it in raw points. Fun slate. Anyway, on to the next one. It is now time to break down the 9-game slate. Once again, hit that like button if you can. We will start it off. Phillies and Diamondbacks. 4.8 run implied total for the Phils, 4 for the Diamondbacks. Zach Eflin against Zach Gallen. And not a lot of ownership coming in from a pitching perspective. Zach Gallen at 7%. I would rather have Eflin than Gallen. I'm wondering where you stand. I'd rather have neither of them if we're being like truly honest, but
yeah, I mean, I don't love either one. I think Gallen is the better pitcher. I think Eflin has the better matchup. For the season, Eflin struck out 22% of hitters, 3.61 xFIP. He's expensive though.
Yeah.
So it's I think going to be tough to really prioritize him. He's not a bad pitcher, but not the level of strikeout stuff that you normally get when you pay that salary. Against left-handed bats this year, 23.2% strikeout percentage. You'll probably have a predominantly left-handed lineup for Arizona. So, I mean, Eflin's fine, but I think there's enough good pitching on the slate where I'm not going to end up prioritizing him. Gallen, on the other hand, I think clearly has the more difficult matchup going up against the Phillies, but I also think he's the higher upside, more talented pitcher. He walks guys a little bit more than you would like, 10% walk percentage this year, but a 27.4% strikeout percentage, 3.92 xFIP. I think one reason you see the high implied run total for Philadelphia, and we've seen this a lot in Diamondbacks games, is their bullpen just typically doesn't pitch very well. So we've seen it in Gallen games before where he goes 5-6 innings, pitches well, and then the other team still hits the over because they just light up the bullpen. So I do think for a $7,200 price tag, there is talent in Zach Gallen. And I am interested just as long as he's going to be low owned. Right now we have him projected at, for 7% ownership with a 12% chance of being a top 2 pitcher. There's other similarly priced pitchers with similar chances of success, but I think Gallen probably ends up in more of my lineups than Eflin does just because of the price.
I'm at a point now where I don't really expect either one of these guys to end up in my lineups. I'm probably more likely to go to bats. In particular, I have the Phillies 6th overall. I have the Diamondbacks 7th overall on a slate of 18. That's, at least above average. But this is my number 2 and number 3 leverage stacks. I think both sets of hitters are going a little bit under-owned, given everything that I'm seeing right now. We have Philly 4th in the top stack tool, dead neutral. We have Arizona middle of the pack, but a positive leverage option. How do you feel about going to bats in this game?
One other note on Eflin, he only went 2 1/3 in his rehab start, and he hasn't pitched in the majors in a month. So probably a decent chance he's not going super deep into this game anyway, which is another reason why I would just be getting to Gallen if I'm going to these two. As far as the bats go, I think that the Phillies are still the more appealing of the two teams, just the better offense. It is a good park to hit. They're not getting a ton of ownership right now, projected to be a little bit under-owned. So are the Diamondbacks, but also, just not as dangerous of a lineup for them. You do have some salary relief with guys like Pavin Smith and Dalton Varsho and Asdrubal Cabrera. But I think I get to the Phillies before I get to the Diamondbacks, even though I also get to Zach Gallen before I get to Zach Eflin.
I'm really surprised to see some of these top stack numbers. I mean, Boston obviously standing out at the top. I like that Arizona leverage option. Where does Phillies bullpen rank? They are 18th in projected FIP for the rest of the season. Yeah, I mean, I have Rojas, Marte, Carson Kelly all pretty significantly under-owned, but I have the same sort of scenario going on for the Phillies side. Herrera under-owned, just 3%. Bryce Harper, probably I should be at double. Real Muto, the only guy that's pulling ownership that I actually agree with. So this is a spot where I'm probably going to get to more bats than I was expecting. I didn't think Philly would show up as neutral here. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, and I mean, as far as Gallen goes as well, so far this season, he's actually given up quite a bit more power to righties than lefties. He has a really good changeup that he throws about 26% of the time to lefties, only about 9% to righties, 24.5% strikeout percentage to lefties, 30.5% to righties, but a 216 expected ISO to righties, only 0.069 to lefties. Obviously, Bryce Harper is still going to be a strong play just because he's Bryce Harper, but I think that does make you feel a little bit more comfortable going to guys like Hoskins, Real Muto, Segura, McCutchen.
Who's your favorite bat in this game?
Real Muto because of the position.
Yeah, I'm with you. Anything else for Phillies Diamondbacks?
Nope.
Alrighty. Pirates and Cardinals, 3.8 run implied total for the Pirates, 4.8 for the Cardinals. Mitch Keller, Miles Michaelis. It's going to be a Michaelis day, I think. Pirates lineup, not very good. Super low implied total. Michaelis at no ownership, 7,100. I know he's not a strikeout guy, but does this feel like a spot where you're going to go?
Yeah, I think so. He's not a strikeout guy, but he's not a bad pitcher in real life. He also threw 84 pitches his last time out in his first start back from the injured list. And right now he's only projected for 2% ownership on DraftKings. I think there's a decent chance that comes up throughout the day, but maybe it doesn't come up that much because you do have Yusei Kikuchi pulling a lot of ownership at that salary range. So I just think, kind of streaming pitchers against the Pirates is a viable strategy. And Michaelis really isn't a terrible pitcher for his career, xFIP around 4, not a high strikeout guy, like you said, but knowing he threw 84 pitches last time out, assuming he can get to something like 90 to 100 here, he can just give you 6-7 innings against the Pirates, get a handful of strikeouts and give you a pretty good score for 7,100. So no issues going to Michaelis.
He showed up in 17% of my sims. That's a great, he's the preferred. I'm also getting to a lot of Kikuchi, so I think that ownership number is pretty real, but I just don't see a lot that I would want to go to below him. To me, he seems like my most likely floor. Do you get to Mitch Keller at all? 6,200, $900 cheaper than Michaelis.
It's really difficult for me to get there. I know I mentioned it a lot that Keller used to be someone that I rostered pretty much every chance I got because I think he has really good stuff. I think that he should be a much better major league pitcher than he is, at least in terms of upside. But this year, he hasn't even really been striking guys out. He has a 20.9% strikeout percentage, 11% walk percentage, 4.91 xFIP. And then this isn't a great matchup against the Cardinals either. This is a pretty difficult team to strike out. They aren't the most potent offense, but they don't strike out a lot. They have enough good hitters. I just don't really think I end up needing to get the Keller on this slate.
Yeah, we're in the same ballpark there. I have the
I think
Cardinals.
it would be,
Ooh, go ahead.
I'll say I think like it would be an easier sell if, for example, Michaelis were getting ownership and Gallen were getting ownership and Kikuchi's getting ownership. And it's just like, okay, well, I'll take an ownership discount on Keller and hope for the best. But with guys like Michaelis and Gallen not really getting ownership, I'd rather just go to them because I think they're better.
I have the Cardinals 4th overall against Keller, but 18th in leverage. They are pulling a lot of ownership. They are the number 2 stack on our top stack tool, but one of the highest negative leverage teams. What do you want to do with St. Louis in this spot?
I think it's a pretty high upside spot. They are getting a lot of ownership though. So typically I'll just kind of end up getting to their hitters individually. I think Dylan Carlson offers a ton of value here at only 3,300. If Tyler O'Neill's back in the lineup, he's going to look good at 4K flat. So as far as like a 5-man stack goes, not my favorite just because of the ownership, but I do think that there's some individual plays that look good.
I think this just has to be some individual stuff. It's the pricing is just too low. They're really easy to get to, but it's not like I really want to attack against Mitch Keller. Like I think he's solid. To me, these guys are overowned, a team that I kind of want to avoid outside of just picking off individuals. This is not a 5-man stack for me at all.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
I'm surprised to see them be second in the top stack tool right now, honestly. Does that feel a little high to you?
Yeah, I was kind of surprised it's that high as well.
Okay. Anything on the Pirates side against Michaelis? The fact that he's not pulling any ownership doesn't make it all that desirable. I have them second to last on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds right to me. Brian Reynolds is always a good play, especially when he's not very expensive. Brian Hayes, Ben Gamble, you can always get to those guys, but really outside of Reynolds, there's nothing I'm going to feel really confident in.
Pretty bland so far. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit more on the bats in that Diamondbacks game to start, but right now it's we're not off to the best start in terms of hitting. But luckily, we got a lot of content coming up today, so we can slide on over to that. Coming up at 2 p.m. on the Fantasy Football Channel, I will be doing another fantasy draft using our Draft Wingman tool and some of the other tools that we have for best ball and season long. But we're going to do a Yahoo draft today, not a underdog draft like we did on the first one. So at 2 p.m. on the Fantasy Football Channel, come join me. I'm going to do the entire draft. You can tell me how bad I do because the first one, I was not very good. Next up, 4 p.m. Eastern time, MMA Strategy Show. Jason Floyd, Pete the Heat Rogers breaking down everything that's going down for the UFC this Saturday. Really fun main event. You don't want to miss it. 5 p.m. MLB Deeper Dive. Adam will be back with Eric. 6 p.m. MLB Live Before Lock. I will be back with Greg. And then 7:30 p.m., about an hour after or a half hour after Live Before Lock ends, you get College Football Strategy. Ben Raza, Matt Kajeski. College football is back, kicking off again this weekend. They are going to be breaking it all down. You don't want to miss it. Ben and Matt are deep into the college football game, including their Betting You podcast, which you guys should check out. Also, free content for today, MLB ownership. We talk about it a lot. It is pivotal. Yeah, it is pivotal to everything that we do here. You can check it out today for free. Check out the links for Nightbot or just browse directly to awesemo.com. Now we're on to Minnesota and the Boston Red Sox. Red Sox 6.1 run implied total, Twins 3.9. Chris Sale on the hill for Boston, John Gant for Minnesota. Sale pulling 26% ownership. To me, that is fully justified. I have Chris Sale as my favorite pitcher for the day. John Gant not picking up any ownership, nor should he. At least that's how I feel. How do you feel about Chris Sale? I think we should start there.
A little concerned. His fastball velocity last game was about a full mile per hour lower than it was in his first start back. I don't want to read too much into that, but when you're talking about someone coming back from a major arm injury, it's a little bit concerning.
Question for you there.
Yeah.
Were both games at home by any chance?
Yes.
They were. Okay. That makes it more concerning to me. I'm always a little dubious about doing those cross, like just looking at stuff like that.
Yeah.
If they're in two different stadiums.
Yeah.
So it both being in Boston is scary.
I'm double checking that, but it looks on Fangraphs, at least it looks like they were both in Boston. That is a good point though. I don't know if I know at one point that was a really big deal. I think they might have started to fix it. But either way, both games were in Boston.
There was a regular stance where like some were a half mile an hour to a mile an hour faster or slower. So like, if you're, 0.2 too fast on average in one stadium and 0.2 too low on the other, like you could just as easily, it could just be coming out. Like there's going to be variability no matter what. So always something that I always wanted to look at. Just wanted to point that out. Sorry for cutting you off.
Yeah, no, that was a good point. But yeah, I mean, I'm still going to treat Chris Sale like he's a very good option here. I think it's probably nothing, but I'd feel a lot better if that hadn't happened. It's not the easiest matchup against Minnesota, but there are still some strikeouts in this lineup. And Sale, of course, assuming he is healthy, is a really, really good pitcher. So I'm still going to Sale here, but again, just a little bit less comfortable than I would be had that not happened in his last start.
Yeah, obviously a tough matchup against the Twins. It's a really good offense. I'm surprised that they're being, I don't want to say disrespected as much as they are, but sub 4 implied total for an offense that I think is pretty good that's telling us to bet on Chris Sale's health, I guess. 26% ownership, showed up in 30% of my sims. I'm happy to do it. Do you have anything that you want to add for John Gant?
No, I don't.
I did not think so. I'm going to put it out there right now. I bet on Minnesota in this game, including taking the 2.5 run line, which is not one you see all that frequently. But I think we need to start with the Boston Red Sox. They are the number one stack for today. Their implied total is almost a full run higher than anyone else. It's not particularly close in terms of their top stack odds, but they're also showing up as a dramatically over-owned team. I do agree with the fact that they're overowned. I don't know if it's as big as we're seeming right now. How are you going to try to manage Boston? Because they're very clearly an outlier for today.
Yeah, I think they are clearly in the best spot. I think it's a little bit different than yesterday. Like yesterday, I ended up barely getting to Boston, which I thought they were in a very, very good spot. But you also had teams like the Angels that ended up going really underowned and, on a lot of their hitters. You had some other teams that looked good. You don't quite have that so much on this slate. Like you have Boston kind of just running away with it. They're twice as likely to be the top stack as every other team on the slate, other than the Cardinals, who you and I both said we thought that was kind of high. So it's a bit different slate. Typically in a situation like this, I'll get to more of the Boston guys than like I did yesterday. It's just, you still want to make sure you're mixing them in with lower owned pitchers and or secondary stacks. One thing that stands out about this slate too, at least right now with the way the ownership looks, we've already mentioned a few pitchers that have upside that aren't very popular. Zach Gallen at 7%, Miles Michaelis at 2%. If that holds, it's going to make it even easier to get to the Red Sox because I'll have pitchers that I don't mind going to that are low owned and help me mitigate the ownership going to Boston. So it really, still will come down to how easy is it for me to find ways to lower the total ownership of my lineup while still getting to Boston. But I do want to get to Boston today, whereas yesterday I think it was a little bit easier to find teams that were similar in similar situations.
What is the difference between the Boston Red Sox today and John Rahm in this week's BMW Championship for you?
What was your question?
What's the difference between the Red Sox today and John Rahm in this week's golf tournament for you personally?
Well, so will I have 92% Red Sox?
No, but are they comparable today? John Rahm is sort of the equivalent of the Boston Red Sox for today.
No, because it's still baseball. I mean, John Rahm is playing golf in a no-cut event, and he's the best golfer. Like,
absolutely.
It would kind of be like, I don't even know what the comparison would be in baseball. Like the Red Sox get to hit until they score 10 runs or something. Like, I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, like, I'm not likely to, I pretty much, I don't want to say never. I rarely go like close to all in on a baseball team, but they're still in the best spot.
I always wonder if that is the, like, I don't want to say the proper mechanism, but going to I don't know if Sean's still doing the aggressive stacking of like 1 to 2 teams.
You mean Wakey? Wakey was the one doing that.
Was it Wakey? I thought it was Sean.
Sean would stack like the worst team possible. And then just win when they do well. Wakey would just like make every single combination of like 2 teams.
Okay. Twins bats. I have them 11th overall, 13th in terms of leverage. Is there any value to getting to the opposite side against Sale today?
Maybe a little bit, just because, again, I think there is at least some level of uncertainty on Sale here. It's still not something I'm going to want to do a lot of. I think it's more so, maybe when you're making your lineups in fantasy fronts, you're just throw a thumbs up on him. Like, again, it all depends on how you make your lineups. Like for me, I know I'm going to get to Minnesota in Fantasy Cruncher anyway. And then it's just a matter of, do they make it into my final set of lineups? But if you're, depending on how you build lineups in Fantasy Cruncher, if you're not getting to the Twins as like an option, maybe just, use the thumbs up so you get at least a little bit, because I do think there's just like a little bit more volatility in what Sale might be in this game with the decreased velo last start.
And you're certainly, it's the right kind of team to try to take a shot on against Chris Sale. Tons of power, tons of righty power in particular. Like if you don't want to get to Luis Arias, I get it, but there's no reason to try to avoid Polanco, Rooker, Donaldson, Garver, Sano. There's no reason to really avoid Max Kepler either, but if he's hitting eighth and lefty, it's not as appealing. But there's a ton of righty power here. It's cheap as hell. This entire team might as well be free. There's a way to get there, and I don't think it's nuts.
Yeah. And even if you're not talking about the Sale velocity, like this is still the kind of spot that's typically pretty appealing in large field tournaments, because the Twins are getting a little bit less ownership than they deserve. Sale's getting ownership. The Twins offer value, so they're going to let you pay up somewhere else. It's not a high probability spot, but you are getting negative correlation with the field, which is always nice.
How are the bullpens looking for both of these teams after last night's game?
That's a good question. Let me see.
Because that, to me, certainly opens up the Twins a little bit more. If you're only expecting Sale to throw, like, let's say 5 innings, that means you're still getting 4 on a possibly depleted Boston Red Sox bullpen.
Yeah, they had, so Austin Davis threw 37 pitches. Hansel Robles threw 24 after throwing 21 the day before. So I think it's safe to say Robles and Davis are both not pitching. They had 4 pitchers not go at all. Garrett Whitlock, Garrett Richards, Adam Ottavino, and Matt Barnes didn't pitch at all. So I would assume that they are available. Yeah, I think the Red Sox bullpen is in okay shape. It could be better, but it also isn't as depleted as, maybe it could have been. For the Twins, similar situation. Albers, Garcia, Minaya didn't pitch at all. 4 pitches from Barraclaw, so he should be fine. 20 and 19 from Colome.
4 pitches from who?
Barraclaw.
Barraclaw?
Yeah.
Is that a real name of a human being?
Al Barraclaw. He used to be on the Marlins. Now he's on the Twins.
I got to look this up.
But yeah, both bullpens are similar. Like they definitely had to work yesterday, but they're not completely destroyed.
Hold on. What's his name?
Kyle, Barraclough.
Not even in the relief pool on FanGraphs. Kyle B. I don't know who this guy is. Kyle Barraclaw. That's not. Yeah, that's okay. That's not as fun then. That's not as fun. I thought he was like a donut. Anything else for Red Sox Twins?
No, that's it.
Ground that bad boy to a halt. 4.2 run implied total for the Mets. 4.3 for the Giants. Carlos Carrasco going for New York. Alex Wood going for the Giants. 9% ownership for Carrasco at 7,500. 18% ownership for Alex Wood at 8,700. How do you feel about both of these pitchers? We obviously have some questions about Carrasco. Wood taking on to me, solid Mets lineup. Tough spot. I don't know what to do here. I'm a little lighter on both pitchers today. I did bet on this game, which is more interesting to me, but what are your DFS thoughts on Carrasco and Wood?
Mildly interested in both. Alex Wood's priced up a little bit higher than I would like. He's looked really good at times recently, but seems to kind of fall off his second time through. Also, he was like, he had a really good start his last time out in terms of strikeouts, but having watched that game, it was a little bit misleading. Just absolutely insane strike zone in that game, like high, low, inside, outside, everything was a strike. So not like you shouldn't look at that game and say like, oh, Alex Wood is getting better or something. Like it was just an absolutely absurd game. Overall, he's just, a pretty good pitcher for the season. He has a 25.4% strikeout percentage, 3.57 xFIP. I think he's on the bout where he should be. I think he's a good option. I don't anticipate getting, crazy amounts of him. On the other side, Carrasco has been pretty inconsistent since coming back from injury. He went 5 innings, 3 earned runs against the Dodgers in his last start, got lit up in the 2 starts previous to that, 1 against the Dodgers, 1 against the Nats. He was fine in his first 2 starts back. He's inexpensive. He's getting about 8% ownership. I don't mind, rolling the dice on him a little bit in tournaments, similar to Zach Gallen. It's not a great spot, but there's potentially upside there. If I could only go to one, I think I would go to Gallen just because I'm a little bit more confident in his stuff at this point, and he's not facing the Giants. So I don't love either pitcher. I would expect to get, if I'm playing 150 lineups, I'd expect to get to both. If I could only go to one of these two, it would be Alex Wood first.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to be lighter on both guys, or at least maybe neutral on Carrasco since he's single digits in ownership. I bet on the Mets. I actually have them as favorites in this game. So for them to be slight underdogs, that was pretty interesting. That I think that they're favorites today.
Yes.
Well, I mean, we're talking about a team that's a 10th of a run underdog, and I think they're like a 10th of a run favorite. So the differences aren't exactly massive here. At home, I mean, if Carlos Carrasco is himself, are they equals?
Yeah, but like, what suggests at this point that Carlos Carrasco is himself?
XFIP, Scherer. I don't know.
351 expected WOBA to righties, only 298 to lefties, but a 244 expected ISO to lefties, 187 to righties. I don't know. He's kind of just seemed not very good.
I mean, I don't love it. It's scary, but
like, I think there's a better chance. I think the most likely
innings.
I think the most likely scenario is that Carrasco is fine, but I think there's a better chance that he is bad than that he is like really good at this point.
Strikeout rate is down a little bit, which is concerning. Hard hit percentage doesn't really bother me all that much. He's not walking a lot of guys, so it's not like a command issue. I don't know how to chalk up a 367 BABIP and not leaving anybody on base as of yet.
Yeah.
So like,
my other concerns are like 2 out of his 5 starts were against the Nats and the Marlins. Granted, the other 3, 2 were against the Dodgers, 1 was against the Reds, but like when 40% of your starts are against the Nats and the Marlins, I feel like your numbers should look better.
I don't know. But look, the Nats game was a problem. 1 inning, you face 8 batters. It ends up looking problematic. But last time out, 5 innings, 3 runs, 5 hits, 6 Ks, 1 walk against the Dodgers. Like, that's about as good as it's going to get. Come out of it with a 420 xFIP for the game. I'm going to treat Carlos Carrasco and Alex Wood like they're basically equals right now. And if that's the case, slight nod for me for the Mets for being at home. Do you like bats, though? I got the Mets 14th. I got the Giants 8th. I could kind of go either way here. Who do you prefer?
I prefer the Giants. I think that there's just a better chance that Carrasco struggles than Wood, and the Giants lineup is really good. Not sure when Brandon Belt's bereavement list starts. If he's out of the lineup, obviously it weakens it, but assuming for now that he's in, $4,200 Belt looks really good. Wade's price is back down to $3,600. Crawford is down a little bit to $4,500. Dickerson's cheap. Yastrzemski's cheap. I just still really like getting to the Giants whenever they're low owned. And I do think there's some volatility in Carrasco because we really just don't know exactly what he is at this stage of his career.
Yeah, I basically have this game the exact opposite in my top stacks tool. In that, well, maybe not opposite. I just think that the Mets are probably a little bit better of a leverage option. I don't love it, though. Neither one of these teams are teams that I'm expecting to get to all that frequently as we get closer to lock. I'll stick to the betting markets. Any Mets bats for you against Wood?
Not really. I think Wood's a good pitcher. I don't think the Mets offense is great. Like, obviously you can always go to Peter Alonso, but 137 expected ISO to both sides of the plate for Wood this season. Actually a higher strikeout percentage against righties at 26.3%. Baez will probably strike out 6 times in 4 at bats. Conforto is whatever. Lindor's back. I don't know. I don't really like the Mets that much. I think Alonso individually looks fine.
All right. Well, let's move on to Cleveland Indians, Texas Rangers, 5.2 run implied total for your future Guardians, 4.3 for the Rangers. Sam Hentges going for Cleveland, Jordan Lyle going for Texas. Neither pitcher getting owned. Are you rostering arms in this game?
No, it doesn't really seem necessary. I mean, Lyles occasionally pulls the rabbit out of the hat and goes out and gets a really good start like he did against Boston last time. But I think there's enough cheap pitching on this slate that is just more talented than Jordan Lyles that I don't need to get there. And then not going to Sam.
There we go.
I really don't know why I can't say his name.
It just, the letters just don't look like they should be there. And I don't know. I just always expect there should be like an accent mark or something. Cleveland is the number 3 stack in the top stack tool. They are the second biggest negative leverage team. I have them second and 14th overall in leverage, so not very good. I have the Rangers third, however. They are 2, 4, 6, 7th in our top stack tool. Basically neutral. I have them as quite a bit overowned, even more so than Cleveland. What do you want to do bats-wise here? Do you have a preference here? Are you trying to go to Cleveland? Is there any appeal to you for the Rangers against Sam? Seems like a lot of offense, that's for sure.
Yeah, it seems like I want to get to these bats, but the ownership is concerning. Jose Ramirez is kind of driving the Indians ownership at 26%. Next highest owned guys, Rosario at 16. But, overall, even guys, Reyes, Jimenez, Johnson all getting 10+%. So it seems like it would be kind of difficult right now to get to the Indians and then still have a low owned team. And if I am going to more popular teams, I would certainly be getting to the Red Sox before I get to Cleveland. So I think individually there's some good spots here. Rosario, Straw is a good value. Ramirez and Reyes are two of the top hitters. But I don't really anticipate getting tons of full 5-man Cleveland stacks as long as the ownership looks how it does right now. And it's the same for me with Texas because they are getting ownership. They're really, really cheap. It's not a bad spot, but it is a lot of bad hitters. I think Adolis Garcia at 3,100 individually is a good option, but and if Yanni Hernandez is leading off, there is some speed there for a cheap price tag, but I don't anticipate getting much in the way of 5-man stacks either.
Yeah, I think we're in the same ballpark here. Just a little bit too much ownership coming in. I think it's pretty easy to want to use a lot of the bats that are in this game, but to prioritize them as 5-man seems a bit extreme. Favorite bat, both sides.
Adolis Garcia. I almost turned it into Adis Sayo and just combined him with Avi. Adolis Garcia and Jose Ramirez.
It's probably Yanni Hernandez for me for the Rangers. And Franmil Reyes looking pretty good. 5,500, 13% ownership. I'll take that.
No Oscar Mercado for you?
Worked out yesterday. I liked him as a DFS play. I didn't like the home run call.
I didn't even know what it was about. I just saw Eric talking shit to you like as soon as the game started, basically.
Yeah, Mercado was Greg's home run pick, and he was 121st in my home run model when he made it, which at the moment I said it out loud. I knew that he was going to dong, but I got one too. Rhys Hoskins homered. So no complaints. Anything else here?
Nope.
All righty, guys. Promo time. Use that promo code WR. You can get our season-long and best ball fantasy football draft kit. It's the same projections, tools, and analysis you normally get from us from a DFS perspective. But now you get to use the Draft Wingman tool, which, again, I'll be using at 2 o'clock. You want to watch that stream. Our best ball rankings and stacking guide, trade value chart, and more. You can get up to a $35 credit to Underdog or FFPC. You get 33% off when you use that promo code WR. It's a pretty good one. And Blitz. I haven't been talking about it for the past couple of days, but can confirm Blitz still going on. 15% off, though, our Awesemo Plus NFL annual pass. So the percentage is down a little bit, but still a really great deal. You're getting player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, premium slack, and more. And as an added bonus, this includes projections and updated depth charts all preseason long. You want to use that promo code BLITZ, get 15% off an Awesemo Plus NFL annual package. 4 more games to go here. Next one up on the list, Marlins and Nats. 3.9 run implied total for the Marlins, 3.6 for the Nats. Elieser Hernandez and Patrick Corbin both basically own the exact same way. Hernandez, 19% owned, Corbin, 20% owned. Let's start with Hernandez. How do you feel about his ownership and this spot? 7,600 today on DraftKings.
I think I like Hernandez. I'm kind of surprised that his top 2 percentage is as low as it is because I think he's a pretty good pitcher. He's in Miami, which is definitely appealing. The salary's not bad. Only went 4 2/3 last start, but that was performance-based. He gave up 4 earned runs against the Reds. He had thrown 82 pitches in his first start back from the injured list. So I'm guessing you can get, 85 or so pitches from him here. Not just, not a bad pitcher overall. 26% strikeout percentage so far this season in a limited sample. Going back to the start of the 2019 season, 28.1% strikeout percentage against righties, 23.9 against lefties, 155 expected ISO to righties, 208 to lefties. So, I mean, I think he's a pretty decent pitcher in a good park, in a pretty good matchup. I like him. I'm just kind of surprised that his top two pitcher percentage is as low as it is.
Showed up for me in 8% of lineup. So I guess I get the top stack odds. Wasn't what I was expecting because I thought he was going to pop a little bit more than seeing the ownership. It just didn't happen to be there. Corbin, on the other hand, looking like a solid play per our top pitchers tool, showed up in a similar manner for my Sims. I know you haven't been a big Pat Corbin guy as of late. Does it feel different here?
I mean, I'm always a pitcher against Miami guy. I'm not going to. The thing is, like, he's 8,200 and he's getting ownership. So this is another one of those situations where, yes, it's a good matchup, but it still comes down to ownership and salary in DFS. And both of those, I think, are accounting for the matchup. You know, he's getting Patrick Corbin's never 20% owned, but he's projected to get it today against Miami. The salary is up to 8,200. He's just, not been very good this season, only an 18.6% strikeout percentage. It is a positive park shift for him going into Miami. There's not a ton of power in this lineup. I think it does hurt, though, that it is a predominantly right-handed lineup. Only a 17.4% strikeout percentage against righties, 234 expected ISO. I don't mind Corbin. Like, I realize Miami's really bad, but I also kind of don't mind getting to Miami bats if Corbin's going to pull 20% ownership.
I guess that's probably where we need to end up here. I have the Marlins 15th out of 18 teams, but they are 6th for me in leverage, plus the added bonus of Corbin. It's not going to be super exciting to get to, but it's not the worst from a power perspective. If you want to go to like Chisholm, Luis Aguiar, Brinson, Brian Anderson, there's something there and it's cheap enough. So I don't really hate the idea. I think I'd rather get to the Marlins side than the Nats side.
Yeah.
Is there anything really exciting about bats?
Not exciting, but like you said, there is enough power here. Brinson has some power and he has speed. Brian Anderson's actually a pretty good hitter. Aguilar has power. Alfaro has an ISO an expected ISO north of 200 against left-handed pitching over the last 3 years. Rojas doesn't have a lot of power, but typically puts the ball in play. They're going to fail a lot. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're a bad offense, but as long as Corbin's projected for ownership, I am interested in getting to Miami. Less so the Nats. I think Soto and Bell, as usual, look pretty good, but I think it's going to be more difficult for me to get to the Nats against Hernandez than the Marlins against Corbin.
Yeah, that works for me, I think. I don't see enough that I really want to prioritize here, but if both pitchers continue to pull ownership, it sort of makes the bats more viable than I would have ever expected. Anyway. Yeah. Padres and Dodgers. This one was also, I tried to type Padres in my sheet. I just typed it into chat. Padres and Dodgers, 3.5 run implied total for the Padres, 4 for the Dodgers. Yu Darvish and Max Scherzer. Darvish pulling 19% ownership at 9,900. Scherzer pulling 36% ownership at 2,500. I had the Padres last night, so that one wasn't as fun as it could have been for me. Obviously, they went long. Probably not expecting to go long here, given the fact, or probably not going to need the bullpens all that much. At least that's the plan with Darvish and Scherzer. Go to whoever one you want, talk about however one you want, because obviously both of these guys are priorities today.
Yeah, difficult matchups for both guys, but I think Scherzer is the priority out of the two. 34.4% strikeout percentage, the highest on the slate. It's about 4.5 points higher than Darvish this season. 3.33 xFIP. 1.36 home runs per 9 isn't great, but other than that, everything looks good for Scherzer. We know the Padres, offense is good, but Scherzer's one of the best pitchers in baseball. He's not super expensive at 10,400. So, I'll definitely get to Scherzer here. Darvish on the other side, I think a little bit more concerning. The Dodgers offense is really scary. Darvish is coming back from the injured list. He only missed 2 weeks. He last pitched on August 12th, but just always a little bit nervous whenever somebody comes back from the injured list, because you never know, if something's going to flare up or affect them at all. He did apparently throw several bullpen sessions and didn't have any issues. So I think it's likely that he's fine and isn't going to be limited here. But if having to choose between the two, I just think Darvish is a little bit riskier.
So I had Darvish show up in 17% of Sims, pretty much in lockstep with the 19% ownership. I had Scherzer at 25% in Sims, a little bit lower than the current ownership. So I was a little bit higher on the sale side of two guys that are, clear of 10K. But either way, I have Chris Sale and Max Scherzer as my top two arms. They are the top two owned arms. So it's not as if I'm all that different. Do we go to bats? Padres, I have 18th, Dodgers 12th. There's certainly power here, but I can't really make a good case for it other than the fact that they are getting owned at least.
I mean, I think the case for the Dodgers is that they have a lot of power. They have a lot of stolen base upside. Darvish this season has allowed 13 stolen bases, grades out. He grades out basically for his entire career is just absolutely awful at controlling the running game. So that gives you a little bit of added upside if the Dodgers are able to get on base. He's allowed 1.44 home runs per 9 this year. So you do have home run upside there as well. Dodgers actually in the middle of the pack in terms of top stack percentage and not getting much ownership. So I don't mind going to the Dodgers. I think it's a lot harder to make a case for the Padres just because Scherzer, I think, is better than Darvish.
Yeah. I can't make a strong case for the Dodgers, but it's definitely there. Given that
Mookie also might be back.
Yeah, I have him in the projected lineup right now as my most owned Dodgers hitter. It's a tough game. It's just two really good pitchers, especially if Darvish is okay, but two lineups that are definitely scary. Lots of ownership coming into the pitching, so there's leverage opportunities there. One that you're going to want to pay close attention to the ownership as we get further along through the day. Luckily for you guys, it's free today. Anything else, Padres or Dodgers?
Nope.
Perfect. Well, got to shout out the sponsor of the show. That would be Odd Shopper. You got to shop around and get the best line possible. Don't leave that money on the table. And that's why you should use Odd Shopper. You can set notifications for line movement. You're going to be able to look at game lines, player props, futures. We've got expected win percentage and expected ROI numbers for all of the player props that exist for MLB. They'll exist for NBA as well, but for player props here for MLB, it's all derived based on the projections that we use for MLB DFS, but we move it over for sports betting as well. You can just quickly click a button. Oh, this is the top expected ROI prop. I'm going to rely on the Awesemo guys. Go ahead and grab that with the best line that you could find. It's all right there via Odd Shopper. That's why they're the presenting sponsor of the show. By the way, costs you absolutely nothing. Odd Shopper is free. Don't sleep on it, everybody. Go to Odd Shopper right now. Well, go to Odd Shopper in like 5 minutes once the show ends. Oakland A's, New York Yankees, 4.2 run implied total for Oakland, 4.3 for the Yanks. James Caprillion, Jameson Taillon, interesting names. Caprillion at 9% ownership on DK. Taillon at just 2. I'd be happy to get to a little bit more Caprillion, and I didn't expect that, but it's not the worst strikeout matchup in the world in a park that is going to mute the Yankees as much as it possibly can.
Yeah, pretty difficult park for hitting for just a variety of reasons. Deep outfield, massive foul territory, relatively cool weather, even in the summer. So really tough park to hit in. Caprillion, not a bad pitcher either. Not the best, but 4.6 xFIP, 23.8% strikeout percentage, 1.22 home runs per 9. The Yankees are always interesting just because they do have power in their lineup. They're also not that expensive. Anthony Rizzo, 3,400, Gallo, 4,200. Those both really stand out. Gary Sanchez at 4K flat. Not getting quite as much ownership probably as they deserve. Right now, we have them as the 4th highest top stack. I probably get around the field on them. I don't think they stand out as a top option for me, but always willing to go to this team when they're relatively low owned. It's just that, like, when I look at the teams that are a little bit under owned, I prefer the Giants. I think I would rather go to the Dodgers because you're getting some negative correlation with the Yu Darvish teams. So I think I end up with those teams ahead of the Yankees, at least the way things look right now, in addition to teams like the Red Sox and the Phillies.
I have the Yankees 5th overall, but basically properly owned. So to me, they're certainly a team that I'm going to get to. I'm curious on your thoughts here. I have the A's 9th, which is basically dead middle of the pack. I have them as my number 1 leverage team. I wish that Taillon was pulling a little bit more ownership, but no ownership coming to Oakland. Matt Olson at 3% is the only guy above 2. Is there any value to you in just simply going to Oakland?
Yeah, they're one of the teams that I'll pretty much always stack when they are low owned. Taillon's been pitching a bit better recently than he was earlier in the season. He's been good against righties in particular this year. 24.5% strikeout percentage, 133 expected ISO, 279 expected WOBA. Lefties have done more damage with a 192 expected ISO, only a 22% strikeout percentage. I think Olsen individually stands out as a really good option. He also is less expensive than he has been recently, down to 5,100 on DraftKings. Mitch Moreland at 2,500 if he's in the lineup gives you some lefty power. Jed Lowry, I think, is a high upside second base option. I don't think I get to tons of the full stack here just because there are some other teams in similar spots that I like a little bit more, like the Dodgers. But I do think at the very least, individually, some of the left-handed power here looks good.
Yeah, I'm not all that worried about going up against Tyon. Good, not great, as far as I'm concerned. And the fact that Oakland is unowned on a slate like this, it's not as if they're pulling some sort of like crazy low implied total. If they're in like the 3.7 range or something, I think it could stand out. I actually think it's a little bit low for the game. I have the line is saying 4.2. I've got him at 4.5. This is a spot where I would happily just be able to grab a little bit more of extra five mans in a situation where there's certainly enough power and I don't have anything to worry about with regards to anyone else being owned. Matt Olson at 3% is not ownership.
Yeah.
Clearly, Yankees bats work for most of them as individual one-offs because they're the Yankees. Closing it out, Mariners and Royals. Sound good to you?
Yep.
4.5 run implied total for the Mariners, 3.5 for the Royals. That is tied for the bottom with the Padres. You say Kikuchi and Brad Keller. Kikuchi pulling a ton of ownership, 24% at 7,300 seems perfectly reasonable to me. 7% ownership going to Brad Keller at 5,200. I think that works as well. I don't have anything really to add for these two pitchers. I think they're properly owned. What do you look at when you see Kikuchi today?
Yeah, I agree. Kikuchi, I think, just a little bit underpriced for his talent level. It's not a bad matchup against Kansas City. He has a 25.5% strikeout percentage and a 3.65 xFIP this season. The only issue he's really had is he's allowed 1.77 home runs per nine. So, has had some power issues. 224 expected ISO to righties. Sorry, that's Keller. 202 expected ISO to righties for Kikuchi. 24% strikeout percentage against them. 31% against lefties with a 180 expected ISO. So as long as he can keep the ball in the park, he should be fine. And there's not tons of power in this Kansas City lineup. Salvador Perez, I think, is a dangerous spot. Whit Merrifield certainly can do some damage. But other than that, it's pretty much below average hitters that as long as Kikuchi's on top of his game, he should be fine. And the salary has come down a bit. So it makes sense, why he's getting ownership. I think he is the best option out of the mid to low 7K pitchers. As far as Keller goes, I don't think he's a very good pitcher, but he's 5,200. I've said it a million times before. I think any major league pitcher who is remotely close to average and fully stretched out is underpriced if they're $5,200.
Yep, I'm with you. I don't have much to add here for bats. I have the Mariners 10th, 8th in leverage. I have the Royals 16th. I'll get to a small amount of Seattle, but ultimately this is not a game for offense for me. Is it for you?
I like Kyle Seager and Mitch Haniger a lot. Seager, they're both good, but Keller has had home run issues this year. 189 expected ISO to left-handed hitters. 224 expected ISO to righties. His actual ISO is much lower to both sides of the plate, so decent chance that we see some regression going forward. I think Haniger and Seager both look good. Not a super appealing full stack from Seattle. They are projected to be a little bit under-owned, but I think Seager and Haniger are really the priorities here for me.
Yeah, nobody showed up in more than 6% of runs. Seattle is just slightly under-owned for me. I don't really love any bit of this. So let's sum it all up now. Who are your favorite stacks as of right now for this slate?
Hang on, I wanted to mention something because somebody mentioned Kikuchi allowing 2.26 home runs per nine since the crackdown. That's fine, yeah. But also Houston, Toronto, Yankees, Tampa, Houston, Oakland, Angels, Yankees, Toronto, White Sox. Those are the last 10 starts for Kikuchi. The guy's just been in absolutely brutal matchup after brutal matchup for basically a month and a half, 2 months. So, maybe the crackdown has something to do with it, but also Kikuchi has just had a brutal strength of schedule.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of power in a lot of those lineups that you just listed off. I'll hit you with my tops for right now. It's kind of great. Like Red Sox and Cleveland are my top two overall stacks. I think it's going to be a little bit easier to get to Cleveland than Boston for right now, but I have them closer than the top stack tool is showing. Phillies, Diamondbacks, and A's are my three favorite potential leverage stacks. What else are you looking at?
Yeah, Boston looks great. Obviously, ownership's the only concern. I really like the Giants. I like the Phillies to some extent. I like the Dodgers, even though it's a low probability spot. I think the ceiling is really high.
Pitching?
Scherzer, Sale, again, a little uncomfortable with Sale's last start, but still assume he's fine. Scherzer, Sale, Kikuchi. I think as a lower owned pivot, Zach Gallen or Miles Michaelis both work as well.
Sale, Kikuchi, Scherzer are my top three, just generally overall. Miles Michaelis and James Caprillion are the two guys that I'd be willing to get to that I think are a bit under-owned. Anything else you want to touch on for the rest of this slate? And if no, let the people know what you've got going on today.
Yeah, that's it for me, but I'll have the deep dive article for the main slate out in a few hours. Be back on the deeper dive at 5 Eastern.
Tricky slate today. I don't think that anything really stands out. There's no any like majorly positive leverage teams. See where this goes.
Yeah, it's outside of the Red Sox. It's kind of just like every team has a very similar chance of success.
Makes it tricky. Good luck tonight, everybody. We will both be back with shows a little bit later. And again, come join me in a little over 2 hours where we'll do a Yahoo Best Ball draft live on the Awesemo Fantasy Football channel. For Adam, I'm Josh. Have some fun today. Enjoy your Thursday. We're out of here.